Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Jentry Podcast today. I always like to start these with my personal quips and just to show how much research I've done on your personal life. And yes, you are much more than the Economic Development Director of Salt Lake City, which is incredible. Over 200,000 people, over 20,000 businesses, and you are much more than that. You are also a mother, but I have to not take away from the story that's going to be told today. I told you while we were preparing for this how impressive your background is, how you got to Utah, how that ties to the history of Utah. So, ladies and gentlemen, Lorena Riffo-Jenson, and I'm just too excited to get into this one. So thank you first and foremost for being here.
Jonathan, thank you. I'm privileged to be talking to you and to share what I have learned in my years of professional life, but also my years as a person in our communities, and share what it's like to live in this amazing country that often I worry about because, like I mentioned to you in my earlier conversation, I worry that the day we stop talking to each other is the day we've given up on our relationships to understand one another. That's the reality.
And that is so important. And that's even more so reason why I appreciate the conversation. You have so much on your plate. I know just doing some research of what you have coming down the pipeline. So I just genuinely appreciate the hour talk that you're giving us. But for our viewers, please just tell us who you are and walk through the incredible journey that's gotten you here. And spoiler alert, Olympics is part of that journey. And I don't get to say that too often. So if you can just share your personal story through your journey, I'd appreciate that.
So I'm actually an immigrant from Chile. I moved here almost to very close to the age of 14. And my parents moved here because, some people may remember in 1973 had a coup d'etat. Military junta ruled the country for a very long time. And my parents came to the United States and declared political asylum, which took about 8 years for us to obtain. And for that time period, there was a lot of uncertainties in our lives. But the one thing that I do appreciate is the fact that growing up in Chile, education is critical. I grew up in an environment where we never talked about when the girls would get married, but rather what we were going to study, what we were going to learn. And I think that honestly was the seed for me that was planted at such an early age that education for me was going to be the avenue to reach and to support some of the things that I was passionate about. But not just education is what you learn in school, which is to think for yourself and that critical thinking. Because school is wonderful, they teach you a great deal, but at one point you can begin questioning what you're learning. And from then on, I went to law school here in Utah. I'm a graduate of Brigham Young University, J. Reuben Clark Law School. I have 2 degrees from the University of Utah, an undergraduate degree in sociology criminology with a minor in French. And also I have a master in public health from the University of Utah. I love this city, and what I love the most is the history that we have. And I think I shared this with you a little bit, and I often share it with people because I think it's easy for us to forget. When the Mormon pioneers came to Utah, there were 8 indigenous tribes. And I always say we must honor the preservation that was here, how beautiful the land was here. And I think it's the connection between the tribes and how they see their natural environment. And also, this is something that often sometimes is not shared, but I think is critical for us to understand, is that Mormon pioneers moved here at a time when they were being persecuted in their own country. This country was actually part of, this land here was actually part of Mexico. And some of the things that we have seen in Utah, in 2010, when we saw the Utah Compact, it was that invitation to immigrant refugee communities. And I think I would like to believe that's one of the reasons my parents selected to come to Utah, because of that history, that you have people, whether you agree with their beliefs or not, finding a place where they can create a community, in a community that would benefit, grow, and create a beautiful environment for their families. So I think that's just a little bit of me. I love hiking. I love learning. I'm always reading. And I love walking with my dog. And honestly, one of my greatest teachers is my daughter, who's always also learning new things about the environment. And she teaches me. And I would say my mom, who is the greatest example of giving.
That's incredible. Your story had a huge effect on me. And hearing how Utah historically is a place of compassion and understanding, one of the pillars is being tolerant. And
Yes.
how many, 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 many years later, that same pillar and that same compassion is what your parents saw and moved you there. And I think the fact that now you are leading, and one of the things I've researched, and you continue to say, is how even in economic development, where I'll say the stereotype is very business oriented and industry oriented, you're still so people and human focused in everything you're doing. And I think it's a beautiful through line, based on the history of Utah and then your personal history. And it makes so much sense to me. So I just want to just say thank you. I love when people, I feel, are called to do something. And I feel like you're definitely living. It's obvious for me to see a true calling and how successful you've been. And speaking of that, there was a ton of humility in your overview. There are a couple things I want to double click on. Wow. So master's in public health, undergrad in sociology with a minor in French, and then a Juris Doctorate. Wow.
I love learning. So you put me in a classroom, I am probably your number one nerd, and I will continue to be that way. I hope I learn until I take my last breath on this earth. Honestly, it's a gift to learn and to grow and see things that you didn't see before. It's always a discovery.
And I think that is beautiful that you take that into your career. Spanning the years, I've seen that you've worked in healthcare, but then you've also founded a creative company
I did.
in Vox Media, and through now, and previously working at the state of Utah, through now working at Salt Lake City. Can you kind of talk to me, like, growing up, what did you kind of want to do, and what were some of those turning points that made you pivot? Because you have a multitude of interests and skills.
It's really interesting. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day when we were walking. I remember going to business meetings with my dad when I was a really little girl. I mean, I was probably 5. And I was a very observant little girl. I watched people and I learned from that. And I remember watching my dad in conversations with attorneys. And I'm like, that is who I want to be. So since I was 5, I knew that I wanted to learn the law, that I wanted to speak the language, because that language is so different. I mean, and it's everywhere in our world right now. Sometimes I wonder how people survive this world. Rental agreement, lease agreement, contracts to buy a car, your mortgage. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Interesting, when I moved here, and I would tell my school counselors I wanted to study law, they would look at me kind of like, I don't think you realize who you are. And it didn't faze me at the time. I think sometimes when you come from a different place and you've seen people like yourself being doctors, running a country, good or bad, just engineers, I mean, creating an economy, right? That you think, oh, I can do that. I mean, there's nothing that would stop me from becoming that. And as you move through the system, and we have to face the reality and learn from that reality and try to change it, I could see that many did not see me as becoming an attorney. They could hear the small accent that I have because I moved at an age where your ability to not have an accent is after the fact. And a lot of times things were not said, but you could sense it. And at the time I moved here, it was really hard because there were not a lot of Spanish-speaking families. I moved into a community that really, I think the parents appreciated the difference, but I don't know if the children did, the people that I spent time with. And it was a really, really hard time. And I think what got me through, honestly, was that I had the opportunity to grow up in a different country that I could see myself being those things. And in as much as the local at times felt unfriendly and judgmental of who I was, I could rely upon what I had seen others that looked like me do. Because it's almost like I never felt that when I was growing up in Chile, that there was any limits to what I wanted to become. And in as much as when I moved here, there was limits from people's perspectives, somehow I was able to keep pushing ahead. And in as much as there was people that put limits on me because they could only see my black hair and my darker skin, there were people that also opened doors. So in our society, I think we see, both. It's almost like that polarity. And without understanding and without ignoring how some people made me feel, I also chose to trust on the ones that saw my potential and the potential that came with me from South America, the more south place that you could find, in the world, except for Antarctica probably. But anyway, I think also that experience, honestly, has made me a better person because I see people. And I don't know if I would have stayed in my country, I would have really seen people because things were in a certain way much easier. And when you're on the other side and you're judged for the way you look, for the way you sound, it gives you an incredible compassion and understanding. So when you say to me, is human-centered economic development? It has to be, because it's all about the person. It's all about the communities that we're trying to build. And honestly, I wish I could take credit for the human center. I have to give credit to the previous director of this department, Ben Collender, because when I interviewed with him to be his deputy, he said human center. And as you know, I had worked in economic development for Governor Levitt. And in my experience there, we always celebrated, the number of jobs, the investment that was coming in, but I never knew if it was going to help one family. One of my projects, it used to be Multimill up in Tremont, probably 2 hours away, an hour and a half from Salt Lake City, and now has been purchased by Post. And, I never knew the difference that I made. I know that I made a difference, but here it was all about the person. It was all about how do we help the small businesses, because they're hopefully hiring residents of Salt Lake City who are now getting jobs, and that investment is happening in our community, but also working with our school districts to ensure that big entities like BioMérieux, which is a French company, that they're constantly asking us where is our next workforce coming from. We can connect with a school superintendent, with our foundation, the Salt Lake Education Foundation, and say, how do we create and how do we expose our young students, not just in high school, but hopefully in junior high, to begin thinking, could I be a scientist? Could I be the next engineer? Could I be the one who runs the entire manufacturing? Because as we know, often not everyone wants to have a university pathway. Some students, because they don't want to, and they're just as brilliant as the ones that end up going to college, they may want to have a shorter time in a school setting, a university setting. So they may pick, or life circumstances. Some students may need to go help their families and they want to help their families. So they pick a 2-year training instead of a 4, 6, 8, 9 years in trainings. And we need them both, right? We need both. So anyway, I just think that we all bring something to the table. And what we bring is our knowledge, experience, but our desire to make better communities. And I think one of the things that we've done really well, and I have to give credit to our mayor. We have 3 women here in Salt Lake City that run the city. And it's quite exciting. We have a mayor. Our chief of staff is a woman, Rachel Otto, who is a brilliant attorney. Now I think she's retired from the law, but does her training. Then we have our chief administrative officer, who is a former council member. She also ran a department. She also worked for the state of Utah. And it really is, I would say, we have an environment that is really inviting. I honestly feel like this is like one of the best places I could pick for me. Now, it's not for everyone, but I feel that I'm heard. And that's really important for me.
I think what you said in everything through line is typically education and people. Taking a step back, I too understand that. My first job was working for my father, who was an entrepreneur and ran his own business. And that became real to me. And it shifted my thought process. And now I'm an entrepreneur that runs my own business. So that representation and taking it a step further, I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland, which is a majority Black county. All the people that I saw running the government, working at the bank, from anybody, you go anywhere, they looked like me. So I was so comfortable when I went to Boston, and it's not like that at all. But I was so comfortable in my skin. I really didn't put any limits on myself because of what I saw, and similar to your experience in Chile and how that affects your confidence. But then also that representation that you now embody, I'm sure there is somebody that is looking up and sees somebody that looks like them, or even to the point that, and you said it with pride, and as you should, there are 3 women that are running the city, and what that means to the young women that are looking up and maybe wouldn't think to be a chief administrative officer, or wouldn't think to be the economic development director. And now they see that representation. So that is the learning, and that learning can be through other people, and seeing that, and then also that people focus and the representation is so important. And in the spirit of learning, treat me like a child. What is an economic development director? Could you break that down for me?
Of course. And I will treat you like my peer. So an economic development director, basically, it's so interesting because everyone is constantly saying, what do you guys do? And, and a lot of times the term economic development, because you have economics. So sometimes people think that they're all about money, the economy. And then development, they think developers. Economic development, as I mentioned earlier, touches everything in our communities. My responsibilities, and this is something I want to make sure I'm constantly doing, is to see what we have right now, but even more important, what are we doing now? So we're creating an environment where companies can thrive. And when I say companies, I'm referring to your small coffee shop to your large entities like BioMaria, for example, or Stryker, which is an international company. What kind of environment do we create? Do we have an environment where people want to move because our quality of life is what it should be? And right now we're facing, not different than anywhere else in the United States, issues related to affordability in housing. And when that happens, and I have to say, I'm really proud of the policy and how our council and mayor, they think. Because if you think about it, during the Depression, what did people do? Families did. They came together, right? So if one had a house, and this is something that you see from the, in the East, as the Depression was moving along right after World War II, you saw a lot of families that would build houses in the back of a house because that was the only way their elderly parents or their children could actually afford a home. I live in an area in Salt Lake City that was, developed in 1917 through the early 50s. And you see that a lot. You see beautiful arts and crafts bungalows with another arts and craft bungalow behind it. I would say right now our city has actually developed, and there is a city ordinance that does allow for that to happen. Now, is it ideal? I think it's part of the American culture for us to want to have our own space and our own houses. We all want that. And yet, I think there's solutions as we work through some of the issues related to housing. As I described earlier, what do people talk about? We just completed our strategic plan. And in that plan, one of the things that came very loud and clear from stakeholders outside of our community and in our community, meaning internally here, other departments and business owners, is that they want their workforce to live near where they work. And so housing, even though we have a different department that's their responsibility and their mission, we are impacting the housing. So when our redevelopment agency looks at supporting developments, housing that will support our families by having apartments. And yes, not everyone wants to live in an apartment, and I understand that. But we are also trying to build apartments that have 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So we're supporting families. But then we can also, with an RDA, when they're receiving loans at a very low interest rate, that we can create, a master lease agreement where businesses can also go in the bottom. So if you have, let's say, daycare, it's a big issue and it's impacting, again, another issue that is impacting our entire nation. We haven't, Scandinavian countries have figured that one out. We haven't figured it out very well. And I was very fortunate. My mother was there for my daughter and for all the cousins growing up. So they grew up as siblings because grandma would pick him up and take him home and make him food. And she was quite strict, and most of them picked up Spanish because of grandma. But the bottom line is we don't have the systems really established to support our young professional families. So we think about daycare. We did some research on it. Think, does that industry need loans? No, they don't want loans. They need affordable spaces where they can open their doors, and they need a workforce. And hopefully, because, they have, when you look at their business model, if they're not paying so much money for a space that can be subsidized by a government entity, then they can pay their employees a little bit more so they can keep them. So we look at all those things. We look at healthcare, proximity to hospitals, our workforce. I talked to you about basically working with our Salt Lake School District. Big entities want to know where their workforce is going to come from. And they want to know that now. Where are we going to be in 5 years? I mean, it takes 18 years, between 17 and 18 years to get the kids through kindergarten. So it moves really fast. Transportation, where is the proximity to an airport? Can we get our goods in? We look at real estate. Do we have enough Class A, Class B in terms of places that large law firms may want to come in and rent that space, or different entities? So we have to be kind of, I don't want to say jack of all trades, but that's the only word that's coming to me, and be able to also navigate internally some of the issues that some of the developers or industries may be facing with our own peers here in the city. So it's not just about regulations. Regulations are critical, and we understand why they're there. But how do we do it in a way that we can support the business, and yet those regulations can also be honored and followed? So I want to say sometimes we tend to be a liaison for the business community, but we're also the diplomats that carry things through our city. And then we also have international development. So we also have entities that want to invest from around the world in Salt Lake City. And one of the reasons is because we have over 100 languages that are spoken here. Because of the religious background, missionaries go and serve in different countries, and then they come back with an incredible skill set that I hope that they continue practicing their language, because otherwise it's really easy to lose the language. But generally speaking, we have an asset that as the world gets smaller and we're more connected, you need those language skills. That if you speak at least conversational, let's say conversational Spanish or French or, Chinese, you can learn the other terms and become very bilingual in those languages or trilingual for that matter.
That's an incredible definition. And what you teased out is the nuances of the role, and from international development to liaison to local small and large businesses, and then how much of it is protecting and supporting the quality of life. And I think
Absolutely.
you hit the nail on the head with the human-centered economic development, because especially if I'm, a company like Stryker, you brought up, I want an educated workforce. I want people happy to be there. I want them as close as possible to the business. I want them to be able to enjoy themselves. So when they come to work, they're ready to go. And then something that you guys do so well, and I just heard through this, is you're really making it a cradle to grave community. And it sounds like you're specifically looking at apartments for the small or the people just leaving college or just starting their careers,
Yes.
to the 2 bedrooms through the small family. And you're thinking of daycare. So you're really thinking through what are some of the tools that you're using to make that, or why has that been so successful in Salt Lake? Because clearly it bleeds through in everything you said.
I think that's a great question. One of the things that, for small businesses, the city has a revolving loan program. It's called the Economic Development Loan Fund. Those are for small businesses. Our goal is not compete with financial institution, but it is to provide enough funding for entities that are located in Salt Lake City that we need to support. So we're willing to come to the table with financial support. Of course, we have an application process. We have a committee, internal, team members from Salt Lake City and the outside community that are part of that. So that's one thing we've done. And what we've seen as federal funding has been reduced, especially after the pandemic, that we've had more businesses, local businesses, coming to us for those loans. So that's one approach. We work very closely together with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. The state of Utah has different, basically, incentives that if there is a company and they meet certain requirements, like, 50 jobs, then they're going to pay salaries that are at a certain level. If they meet all those requirements, there could be an incentive coming from the state of Utah that is so it's after the fact performance. So the state of Utah overall has been very conservative, which actually I support, because we're not giving everything away just to get a company. We want the right companies. Something that I failed to tell you is Salt Lake City, water is a resource that is, if we don't have water, we don't live, right? So we have an ordinance in place that you can only have, use a certain amount of water, 200,000 gallons a day. And if you are a company that needs more than that, then we are happy to refer you to other communities that may not. I'm not saying that we're right or wrong. It's just this is what we have chosen to do for our city. There's other cities across the state of Utah that don't have those limitations. And having said that, so we do have different tools that we use at different times. But I would say Salt Lake City, locally, we're more focused supporting the local level. And if there is a large corporation that may want to come, then we partner with the state of Utah and also the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, which is their work is more in site selection. We have a partnership with them as well. And they let us know. And they, in fact, we were with them 2 weeks ago in South Carolina, because our goal is to also learn from other places, what are they doing well that we can duplicate? Because we don't have all the answers. One of the things that I always challenge our team, can we learn from someone else? Has someone else done this already? And, maybe it doesn't quite fit 100% in our structure, but maybe fits 80%. So we're constantly talking to other jurisdiction and learning from them how we can do things better and we can improve. Because I think in development and economic development, we have to constantly be asking those questions. And like I mentioned also earlier, what are we doing today? So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, our communities are healthy and they're thriving. And that's what I want to make sure that we do. When I'm on this old little lady, I can be proud and say, because we did things right and people also did things right, because it's just not one person. It takes a team and it takes a community to want to go in that direction. We're now thriving. And that's what I want to see. I mean, I think that would be an incredible legacy. And fortunately for me, I work with good people and they make things happen. It's not just me. It's an entire team of incredible people who are passionate about Salt Lake City and our business community.
That's incredible. What you stated was you guys are doing it the right way.
I hope
And
so.
yeah, but you guys put your values first and you're staunch on that. It was very telling to me, and I don't hear that all the time. Hey, if you're using above, I think it was like 200,000 gallons of water, you might need to go down the road because that's not going to happen here. And that shows how much you believe in the long-term
Yes.
viability of Salt Lake City. I also hear a lot of working together. You mentioned the governor's office for economic
Opportunity.
economic
They
opportunity.
changed their name. So you are not, I mean, what you're doing is what we do every day.
So I spoke to the director of innovation there, and just
Yes.
hearing how you guys really are putting your money where your mouth is, and respect to being conservative and not just handing out money at all. There's a process, there's vetting, but one thing I also saw where there's like levels. There's like you're just kind of getting started business opportunity for like a little bit of money, and then
Yes.
I love the post performance bonuses.
Yes.
Or incentives, excuse me. We want to help you and we want you to succeed, but we have to see you put it in action first. And then that money is going to come. And another thing, I think it's incredible that you are even looking to other localities. That shows the humility and that it's most important to do it correct. And we may not know all the answers, so we may need to look to other. But I'll ask you again to treat me like a child one more time. You're
You're such a brilliant human. I don't think I can do that.
No, I like to have things broken down so I can understand them. It's a need, and that's when I can come alive and I can learn. But you spoke about a strategic plan that was recently done. Can you explain what that is? Some of the process. It sounds like you even said you guys had advisors that come in, and then how are the council and the mayor you spoke of, like how are they involved in that process, or what is the order of operations? Like when is it presented versus when is it finalized? Like how does that process go?
That's a great question. So the Department of Economic Development works for the mayor, right? And no different than I like to use, sometimes people are more aware. By the way, a municipality, I've worked for all kinds of government. Municipalities are the most difficult ones because everything's smaller and you feel everything. right? So council is basically, they hold the purse. So in as much as we work for the administration, council also needs to understand the direction we're going and we're using to move forward and the work. One incentive that I failed to mention also was the special assessment area. A lot of time that's created by statute, and either a county or municipality can run the process. And a business district like our downtown uses that to bring about activation and promotion into our downtown corridor. What we're seeing now, so they can use it for, let's say, economic promotion. Economic promotion could be putting a festival, creating ambassadors that are constantly in the city, ensuring that we're answering questions to tourists. Or if something needs to be clean, we are also relying on those ambassadors. So anyway, I wanted to mention that at a local level, we also have that. What we're seeing right now is that more business districts, as different districts are beginning to grow and develop, they want to use this as a tool for economic promotion. So that's something we also manage, and I failed to say it. What we do is make sure, and I did say in our strategic plan, we talk to internal stakeholders and we did talk to external stakeholders. Our mayor, basically, we brief her and we kind of capture her vision overall for Salt Lake City. And where do we fall into that? We also work very closely with council, and we are on an ongoing basis, as we should, briefing them so they know what we're doing and how we're using the taxpayers' funds. Because to me, if I don't need the money, I'm not going to ask for it. How we're using those dollars to promote and create basically, economic opportunities, economic success, sales tax, all those things that come together to ensure the city is funded to basically provide for parks, roads, snow removal in the winter months, lighting, all the things that are needed in order to have a city that functions really well. So we had to understand very closely what department, so the Department of Community and Neighborhoods said you must have housing included. Even though you don't do housing, we need your expertise at the table. So whenever there is issues related to housing, we can work with our peers. We can let them know. We also did bring in and worked with our redevelopment agency. They recently changed their name to CRA, which is Community Revitalizing Agency, to ensure that when developers are being funded with a low interest loan to build housing for our community members, that we have that master lease agreement and they hold the master lease so we can have small businesses going in there. Those small businesses could be funded through an economic development loan fund loan. So we are constantly touching everything. And let me give you another example that we have included in our strategic plan is the coordination with construction. So if the Department of Transportation identifies a street that needs to be redone and the Department of Engineering executes whatever needs to happen, what we've seen is that economic development needs to be at the table. And I'll tell you why. In our second downtown, sometimes that's what they refer themselves to, is our Sugar House Business District. And it's been there for a very long time, and there's a beautiful history to that area. And we have had a lot of construction in that area being done by the city, but also developments, building a lot of housing. Because of the demand on the infrastructure, we have needed to also upgrade our sewers, water lines. So now you see the city impacting business district, and all of a sudden economic development needs to be there to support the small businesses. So what do we do? Some can argue this is good, this is it's an okay strategy. I think it's an okay strategy. We have provided small grants to the businesses who are being impacted so they can communicate with their clients. We have also created, public awareness campaign. You may see their orange cones, but we're open for business. And then we've given a face to those businesses. Charlie. Charlie has been here, cleaning doing your suits for years. They did your mom's suits, your dad's suits. Now come and see Charlie, because even though there's orange cones, they're still there. So we start here and then we bring it down to the smallest level, which it can be a construction being conducted by the city. And then we also get calls when we're not doing construction and we're being blamed for the construction, but then we need to communicate with our business owners and let them know who is building. So we do try to have really good relationship with our gas company, electricity, all the providers, to ensure that there is a way for them to know when we're getting complaints and information from our small business community. So anyway, and we share that information. We have another project called Open Streets that is funded by councils, supported by the mayor. Is basically closing the street for activation in June. So we'll be closing Main Street for 4 blocks, and each block will have its own theme, like closer to City Creek, family theme, and then we'll have a market. And then as you move down, you will have restaurants and bars, and more activities for the adults as it gets late at night. But that's another project funded by council. And we just informed council in the last 2 weeks. And then we're meeting with our mayor this upcoming Wednesday to ensure she's informed of all the details of this project. But the whole idea is to bring activation downtown and to ensure that people are feeling part of the community. And, lastly, I think I want to say that one of the things that our mayor has challenged us, she really wants to see families downtown and seniors. So there's been a couple of studies done. How do we make our Main Street? How do we make our downtown? She wants to build, and I think it's a green loop that surrounds the city with green space and also places where families and seniors can enjoy. Because a lot of times what you see in cities is you see a lot of cement and they become heat islands. But if we really want to make downtown a community where families can find themselves in, we have to create spaces that families feel welcome. So maybe, in Salt Lake City, you probably have been here. And if you haven't, you need to come and see us. Our blocks are very long and especially downtown. And also our sidewalks are very wide. So we're thinking, what if we put some things there that basically bring people outside their buildings? I mean, that's the one thing that even bringing people outside their houses sometimes is hard to do. But if we're going to create a community, you have to know your neighbor, even if you live in a building. That's an apartment building, I meant, not just a house. Sorry.
Hear a lot of coordination, and it seems like it's not for you, not only to present to council, but work hand in hand on different strategic initiatives with council and then the mayor. So that is great. Sometimes I have heard situations where those relationships can be a little tenuous or you have to be very strategic with those relationships. But it seems like you guys are working lots, which is great. I always say everything can't be all sunshines and rainbows. Are there any
No.
challenges or there's anything that if you could just like snap your fingers? I know you spoke about housing affordability. I didn't know if that would be it. But is there anything that you wish you could just snap your fingers and change?
Well, I think I see your question as 2-part. And I always come to the table very authentic. There's stressors in relationships sometimes. And, I have faced some of those stressors. One of the ways that I have, how authentic are you? Are you going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly when you make mistakes as a department? I've always said, absolutely. We'll come to the table with solutions. Even when we make a mistake, we'll come to the table with solutions. And there's been times that we've shown up to council and said, X happened, and we're here to inform you. But also we're here to tell you that we have a solution to what happened. I don't hide things because I feel in the long run, once that trust is lost, it's lost for good. People will always wonder, are they really telling us everything? But I also think that when people trust you, they expect you to bring solutions to the table, and we do that. But do we make mistakes? Absolutely. Do I think with construction, when it came to Sugar House per se, could we have moved quicker? I did try to get ahead of that last summer, and I was told, oh, I think we should wait. I wish I would have moved when I knew I needed to move instead of waiting, because I think we could have put a campaign together. So in as much as, yes, there's difficulties and stressors, I also think that as long as your reputation as a professional and as a human being, you have that reputation that people can say, hey, I trust what she says because I'm always going to bring you the truth, then I think we are okay, even if you're not happy with me. You could be upset at me, and I get it. And of course, if you have constituents who are not happy with you, I get it too. If they can't sell their product, businesses, and I know what it's like to be a small business owner, you're going to be upset because you need to bring customers in the door so you can make payroll, so you can pay for your space, so you can hopefully pay yourself. So I am very, very cautious to ensure that my relationship with the people I work with, regardless who it is, in the mayor's office who I report to, or council who I also report to, we have those honest discussions. So yeah, and the one thing that I would say in the state of Utah that I think that I'd like to see, if I could snap my fingers, we have a reputation of working really well together, and I believe we do. I honestly think we do. And I honestly think people want to come to the table and find common ground. But I also want to say that sometimes it's okay if we don't find common ground, as long as we're given an opportunity to listen to one another. And I do think sometimes the culture here is uncomfortable if you don't always agree with everyone, the direction they're going. And my philosophy is, I can agree at the end, but I need to be able to have an honest discussion. I need to know that you heard me, because I also represent a voice and a different perspective. And all those different perspectives make us better together. But we have to have difficult discussion. And if I could snap my fingers, it would be daycare. We need to support our families and our young couples that are raising children. So whatever that family may look like, we need to help them. Because if we don't support our families, we're not going to have, we've seen the decrease across the United States of children, of families having children. And, it's all the stressors that come with that. Like I mentioned, without my mother, honestly, I don't know what I would have done. But she was there for me. So I hope someday to be there for my grandkids so I can be their daycare.
Well, I appreciate that as the father to soon to be 4 days away from a 10-month-old.
Oh my
Daycare.
goodness. Oh, kiss that baby. Oh my gosh. The greatest gift we can have as parents, but our country. They're the next generation. It's up to us how we support them, how we support you, how we support, our families.
It's the fact that you're thinking about it actively, not just thinking about it, but actively having conversations and even breaking down their business model so you can better support them, shows how much you actually care about that next generation. You spoke about conversations.
Yes.
This is important. I wanted to see if there's any last piece of advice that you'd like to share with our viewers.
Yeah, I would love to say, this country is my adopted land. And I've shared this with a lot of my friends, and I may get emotional, so bear with me, because this is really important. We have to protect what's beautiful about this nation, because the world looks at us. And when the United States, believe it or not, light gets dim, hope is also lost in the rest of the world. So there was a constitution and there is a beautiful document that was drafted. And I do believe that had incredible inspiration, and we need to honor that. So I hope that, people understand the importance that we have in our world. And I don't want the world's light to be dim, but rather for us to support each other as a country. And even if we think differently, we can have respectful and honest discussions. So, and I think when we do all that together, our economy just does well, because we're coming to a place to build things rather than destroy them. That's it.
It's hard to follow that one. If our viewers would like to reach out, what's the proper channels, or if they want to follow what's going on in Salt Lake City, where should they?
I I think they need to come to our website. And of course, I'm going to have to look it up. I don't have it memorized.
It's all
Is slc.gov/ed for economic development. But if you just come to Salt Lake City, and by the way, we're working on our website. I think government moves really slow, but great people are working on it. But we wanted yesterday to have kind of moved into our era, but what can you do? The information is there, though.
as long as the information is there and they know where to see the incredible work you're doing.
Thank
I'm
you.
very excited for our viewers. And Lorena, thank you again. I just wanted
Thank
to
you,
say I
Jonathan,
appreciate it.
for your patience with me too. And you just hug the baby.
I will. I'll definitely hug
Okay.
the baby.
Honestly, they're just incredible, beautiful souls that are part of our community. So thank you kindly.
Thank you so much. And for our viewers, that wraps another amazing episode of the Jentry Podcast, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.